Major funding for these programs is made possible by grants from Chase Commercial Term Lending and Capital One Bank, New York Community Bank, the Witkoff Group, M&T Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Genova Burns, Jean Tomasi and Webster, Greenberg Traurig, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company. Additional funding is provided by grants from AKA Hotels, Corman Communities, Aerial Property Advisors, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Colliers International NYC, CPEX Real Estate Services, Cushman & Wakefield, Customers Bank, DDG, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, First Nationwide Title Agency, Flushing Bank, Friedman, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, Hap Investment Developers, Herrick Feinstein, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Chairman USRealty.com, John Katsimides, Red Apple Group, Margolin Weiner and Evans, Madison Realty Capital, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Matone Group, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, New Banks, People's United Bank, SJP Properties, Sterling & Sterling, Stonehenge Partners, TD Bank, Terra CRG, the CUNY TV Foundation, the Continuum Company, Urban American, and these friends.
Delivering soda? Fox's You Bet? Docks in Brooklyn? Vietnam? Fire department? Not the fire department, the fire commissioner. I'm so lucky today to have Sal Cassano, who is the 32nd fire commissioner of the city of New York. Thanks for being here today.
You're welcome, Michael. Thank you.
So tell me about the grandparents, you know, when they came over. They came over in the early 1900s?
Yeah, well, my dad came over with his parents.
Okay, so tell me about your grandparents.
Sure. In 1909, my father was born in 1907.
Right.
And
Your father was born in
Ischia, Italy, yep.
And
he came over in 1909. He was 2 years old.
Okay, and what did your grandfather do? Where they settle when they came over in 1909?
They settled in downtown Brooklyn, which is now known as Carroll Gardens.
Oh, fancy! That's right.
It wasn't fancy back then, but
so they settled in downtown Brooklyn. How? What did he come over to do?
He just came over to make a better life. Right. He was going to start a family, and my dad was the oldest.
How many brothers and sisters?
Well, he had 4 sisters. He had 2 brothers, but the 2 brothers got killed at a very young age. I never knew them. They were.
So that's dad's side, okay? Yep. Tell me about mom.
Well, my mom's family came from Procida, another island not too far from Ischia. My mother was born here, but her parents came over. I don't know, it might be in the late 1800s when they came over.
And how does your father subsequently meet your mother?
Well,
the Ischia connection?
Yeah, it was that the whole Carroll Gardens connection. And
oh, they were living in Carroll?
They were living in the same area, and we stayed in that area. We made big moves. We moved from one side of the street to the other. That was a huge move for us back then. And then we moved across the street to Court Street. That was really a big move. That was like we were these travelers. Like we moved around the same blocks.
How did your father get involved with the docks?
That was a job he had. My father, he was an unbelievable person. Like I say, people talk about role models. My father was my role model. He never graduated high school. He waited till all his sisters were married so that he could take care of his parents. And my mother waited patiently to get married. But when my father's last sister was married, they decided that now was time to get married. And he went to work on the waterfront, which a lot of people at that time did when you came from that area. And he was a great man.
Where on the waterfront?
We worked in like downtown, like on Columbia Street, Conover Street, all those piers along the waterfront. And he was a hard worker.
So he was a dock worker.
Dock worker, very hard.
And what type of dock work did they do?
Well, he first they unloaded ships, and then he became what they call a checker, in that they would check the cargo onto trucks, check the cargo onto ships. And then eventually, because he was such a hard worker, extremely honest person, he became the boss. He became a dock boss, what they call. And that's somebody that really earned his promotions because he didn't know anybody. He was somebody from Italy that came over without any kind of connection whatsoever. But because of his hard work and his dedication and his honesty, they promoted him to become the boss.
So when you were born in 1945,
Correct.
Where's the family living now? Were they on Court Street?
We were born on. The house that I was born on was Court in First Place, and we had been on. My parents had moved in three different houses on the same block. As they had more kids, I had two sisters and a brother, so there was four of us.
Where are you in the pecking?
I'm the youngest.
You're the baby.
I'm the baby.
Okay.
And I was treated like the baby, which was good because I got anything I wanted.
But you see, your brother later on has a major influence on your life. So
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So tell me, you said, I think in one of the articles or something I read, you loved Pee Wee Reese. You loved Ebbets Field. How do you end up in Ebbets Field and Pee Wee Reese? Was it your uncle?
Well, the funny, my father was a big Dodger fan. We were Dodger fans, but my father's best friend, his name was Joe Valenti. They were like brothers. They weren't brothers, but they were they're close to brothers. And he was a huge Dodger fan as well. And he was single up until he was almost 50. So I was his adopted son, and I'd go to Ebbets Field. He had season tickets there, and my favorite player was Pee Wee Reese. The irony of it, my brother's favorite player was Jackie Robinson. And that connection between Jackie Robinson and Pee Wee Reese was on the field for them, and for me and my brother was off the field because he loved Jackie, I loved Pee Wee, and we were huge Dodger fans.
You went to public school, right?
Yep.
Okay, you go to public school, and one of the first jobs that I brought up briefly was, who was the guy who was the soda man? Certain people don't realize that when we were kids, soda was not sold really in the supermarkets. It weren't really, I don't want to make us that old, but there wasn't supermarkets. Soda was delivered in these wood cases with the seltzer bottle, and what?
Well, my brother-in-law, my sisters, my younger sisters, my second sister, right? I'm the youngest, but she was the youngest of the two sisters. Vivian, her husband Joe Velez, had a soda rap. He worked for somebody, Sorrento Soda at the time. And I guess to get in good with my sister, he wanted to see if I would like a job. I was young, I was 8 or 10 years old, and those cases were really heavy. But, giving me a job, getting in good with my sister.
Now, wait a second, but you were delivering the seltzer
and soda.
Oh, yeah. And also the Fox's You Bet.
Fox's You Bet, the chocolate, that's still going on today. My granddaughter still loves it.
Right.
So that was my really first job. It was hard work, but, I worked Saturdays. And you started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you come home at 6 o'clock at night. You worked all day. We took a lunch break. But it was, again, a way of showing you that hard work pays off. I made a few dollars and saved it.
Did you go to the docks also? Did you work with your father when you were
in
public school?
Yep. I came out of high school. I went to...
No, that I know, but when you were...
Oh, no.
He didn't take you to the docks?
No.
Because you had two high schools. You went to...
I went to Brooklyn Tech first out of grammar school.
So why were you going to Brooklyn Tech?
Well,
you were a good student then.
I thought I wanted to be an engineer. And then I realized, not my line of work. I was going to be a mechanical engineer, and I couldn't draw a straight line, even with T-squares and all kind of. I said, this is not for me. This is not my line of work. It's not going to be something.
So then you go to the legendary Boys High.
Go to legendary Boys High.
So you graduate Boys High, and you enroll at Pace at Night, and few people realize that you got a job at an entity that used to be called First National City Bank. Okay, and you were working on the Stuyvesant branch on 15th Street and First Avenue. What were you doing there?
I was what they called a rack clerk. I started out from the very bottom, and we'd process the checks at the end of the night. We would mimeograph them, if anybody knows what a mimeograph is, and we would copy them, and that's what I did. And was out of high school, and
then you go to your boss and you say to him, I'm going to go to work at the docks? And what he say to you?
He says, "Are you crazy?" That's what he told me. He says, "Are you crazy? The future you have in this corporation?" I'm thinking, future? I'm making copy of checks. I don't know what kind of future that is. He says, "Don't do anything yet." And he sends me up to 399 Park Avenue. It's headquarters. I get an interview, and the person that I get an interview with says, "You have a great future with this bank, and we have a program which is a high school training program. In 2 years, you'll be an officer on the platform, but you have to follow our program. And you can go at night. We'll pay for your college." So I gave it a try. I gave it the college try.
You did. So you went up to the training at 399?
I went to 399 Park, and then they sent me to a different branch. They sent me to a branch on Montague Street, Montague and Clinton.
You knew Brooklyn at least.
I knew Brooklyn for sure. And I was in that whole big branch. It was a very big branch, learning all the different jobs. And then it really wasn't for me. I thought it was, but it wasn't. And I went back to work with my father on the waterfront.
And then it's called the draft. You get drafted, and what happens? It's 1967, right?
I get drafted in 1965, and I go to do my basic training. I do my basic training. I go to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and then I get sent to Fort Meade, Maryland. I get assigned to the 11th Armored Cav, and I think my first night after my leave out of basic training, I walk in and the place is empty, and I'm saying, "What is this all about?" Next morning I go, I get interviewed, and the person says, "Look, there's nobody here, but we're going to beef up this unit, and we're going to Vietnam in the summer." And I went, wow. And this was December 31st. I'm on guard duty that night. This is a 20-year-old kid, and I'm thinking, wow, my life has just changed forever. And sure enough, 8 and 9 months later, we go to Vietnam.
How long were you in Saigon?
I was there from August of 60, September of 60, we took a ship with a boat, 28 days on a boat. But September of 66, I left in July of 67, and I came home. That's when I got out of the service.
Okay, you come back, and at this time, you go back to the docks. But what's interesting is your brother, who had no involvement with the fire department, had enrolled and was working at the fire department. What does he say to his baby brother?
Well, he tells me, "Sal,"
You know, besides the fact that you were close with Pee Wee Reese and the Jackie Robinson, yeah.
he tells me about the fire department, and he says, "Look, it's a great job. You got a chance to really be with people that are great people." And I really, this is seriously, I looked at him and I says, "Pat, I want to make money. You're not going to make any money as a firefighter. So I think I'm going to stay on the docks." He says, "Look, there's a test coming up. Apply for the test, study, and let me tell you what the department's all about." So he took me to his firehouse. They had a softball team. I played softball with them.
Great camaraderie.
Oh my God! And when I realized that they were more than just coworkers, they were friends, their families, company picnics, in the firehouse. If something happened to you, they took care of you. And I thought, this is really more than a job. This isn't just like a job 9 to 5. This was 7 days a week. If you needed help, people working on each other's homes, families, the kids all got along well with each other. And then I really sold me on that second family aspect of the department, and then I decided, I think he's right, this is the job for me.
So when did you join the fire department?
I come on the job on November 29th, 1969 is when I was sworn in.
And, okay, and your first location was Fire Company 31?
31 engine. It was, at that time, their house was condemned. They used to be on Lafayette and Walker. So they were in with some other companies on Duane Street, right off of Broadway. And then from there, we move up to Broome Street, and we end up with 55 engines. So it's a double house for a while. We closed 31 engine. They closed it because of the budget cuts and the crisis, the financial crisis in '72. I end up in 55 engine, and that's where I get promoted out of engine 55.
To lieutenant.
To lieutenant, 1977.
Right, but during that period of time, you go back, you go to New York City Community College, you get your associate degree, and then you go back and you get your bachelor's from John Jay.
John Jay. Well, again, my brother, as an advisor, tells me someday you're going to need a college degree to get ahead in this job. So you should start right away. So I go to college right out of the box. They had a great program, dual track. You can go during the day, you can go at night, depending on your work schedule. So it's kind of hectic for a while, but I started in 1970, right on, as soon as I came on the job, and it took me 6 years, but I got my bachelor's degree in 6 years, still working full time.
That's great. So it's 77, you're a lieutenant. Okay, let's go to the progression, because I want to go up to 9/11. Okay, from lieutenant, what's the next role?
I get promoted to lieutenant in 1977. I go work in Brooklyn in a company, Ladder 113, very active company, in East in Crown Heights, East Flatbush, a great place. I hate to say this, but we went to a lot of fires. It was really good. You learned your skills.
You said to me, and I think it's important, because you're a fire commissioner who loves the job. You enjoy the action of the fires. You said, there have been fire commissioners who were really political, or in a different manner, they were from labor side and different things, more of administrators. You're a fireman, and you enjoy. I hate to say, being there with the men on the ladders.
I loved it. I loved it. I always prided myself on being somebody who's, for my first 30 years of my career, I was in the field. I was never offline. I was always in either a firehouse, a battalion, or a division, because that's what I liked. I liked the action. I liked to be with the other firefighters. I liked to take care of them. I liked to mentor them.
So before 9/11, what was your role just before that?
Just before September 11th, I was a 3-star chief, and I was called a citywide tour commander. Which we did is, the day that you were on, you were in charge of any fires within the city. But I also oversaw a couple of different, I oversaw the borough of Manhattan.
And you were, at that time, working in Metrotech, the fire?
Yes. Well, what I had been done, what Commissioner of Edison at the time put me in charge of a radio project. We had put radios on in the field in March of 2001, and we brought them out in analog, in digital. Digital is good for a lot of things, but it's not good for the fire service that uses a lot of radios on the scene that talks point to point. We had to pull them out within a week. They just didn't work for us. He put me in charge of that project to redesign them and get them back into the field in a way that we could use them. And unfortunately, September 11th, we still were in the middle of that. We hadn't
the transition
yet. And then it took us all the way till February of '02 before we even started that project again.
So it's 9/11, and where are you?
September 11th, I'm in headquarters. We're having our morning coffee, talking about what had happened the night before, talking about what we planned to do that day. And in the command center was the chief of department, Peter Gansey, who was killed on September 11th. It was at that time Chief of Operations Dan Nigro, the citywide tour commander Donald Burns, who was killed, most knowledgeable person about operations we had at the time in the job. One of my very best friends, Jerry Barbara, killed on September 11th. And we were talking about what we were going to do that day, and then we hear the radio blare, an explosion at the World Trade Center, and the rest is history.
So you go to the Trade Center, and then you get hit by the rubbish, right?
Yeah.
And you dive into, and you got hit by rubbish.
Yeah, I got hit by debris.
And then, because this is a story that you can't forget, you then are taken by ambulance up to St. Vincent's, right?
Yeah.
And you're on a, what do they call
Gurney.
it? Gurney. Over there, you're on a gurney, okay. And you hear this voice. Tell me about the voice.
Well, my eyes are closed, and I'm full of debris and soot. And I guess I looked worse than maybe I really was. Banged up, but not critical. And I hear this voice praying over me, sort of like the last rites type of thing. And I says, that voice was very distinct. If anybody's ever spoken to Cardinal Eagle, then they know his deep voice. And I jumped up and I woke up and I opened my eyes and I says, Carl, I'm going to be okay. I'm not dying. I'm fine. I'm going to be okay. But it was like, it brought me back to reality of, whoa, this is really like, go take care of somebody else that's needs your help.
So you left, you signed that, and then you went back to the trades.
Oh no, I signed out. I had somebody come pick me up, and I went back to headquarters.
Right.
To get some clothes on. I had no clothes. I was in a hospital gown when I left there. I just had to get back to work. And then I went to work in the operations center. We had plenty of people at the field, but there was nobody left in headquarters. So I started to run the headquarters operation.
You didn't get home to your wife until the next day?
Next night, about 9 or 10 o'clock, I didn't get home to see my wife, my kids. I called them, let them know I was okay.
So the next couple of years, your roles at the fire department before you were commissioner?
I was promoted to the chief of operations. Pete Gansey, our chief of department, was killed, so they promoted They inaugurated chief of department. They promoted me to chief of operations, and I was in charge of the day-to-day operations of the two operations. We set up one at the World Trade Center, just to handle strictly the World Trade Center, and then one to handle the rest of the rest of the city. I was put in charge of all those operations and EMS as well. Right after, we were promoted on the 16th of September, but basically from September 12th on, I took over the operations of the department.
So tell me about the phone call, how Mike Bloomberg called you up and said to you, I need you. Tell me the story.
Well, it was one night, I was the chief of department. It was 6 o'clock at night, and I'm still in my office, and my staff had gone home. And I get a phone call from the Mayor Bloomberg secretary. He says, the mayor would like to know if it's possible if you could come over to City Hall. So I'm thinking, I don't know if I have much of a choice. He's the mayor, I work for him. Of course I'm going to come over to City Hall. Had no idea what the call was about. So I said, I'll be right over. And I drove over there, walked into City Hall. And
at night?
At night, 6 o'clock at night. Nobody's around.
You had no idea about this?
No, none whatsoever. None whatsoever. And he sat down, he started talking to me about what thinking, we have a lot of tough decisions to make, but I would like you to be the fire commissioner and spend the next 4 years with me as I finish out my third term. And but we had worked the previous 8 years very closely together as the chief of operations and the chief of department on a lot of tough decisions, a lot of firehouse closings.
Did you have to make a decision then? Did you have a choice? This one was?
Well,
did you call your wife up?
No, I made that decision on my own. She always, I've had tremendous support from my wife every step of the way. Whatever she thought I wanted to do was fine with her.
So you are installed as the 32nd Fire Commissioner. Well,
it was effective January 1st, 2010. I was sworn in on the 11th, in front of my family and friends at headquarters.
So talk about those 4 years.
Well, it was some tough times. We had budget crisis from the day I went into office until the day the mayor left. We always were under the budget gun. But I always told the mayor, as I tell everybody, the most important thing we do as a fire department is to make sure that the public is safe. That's our number one goal, our number one mission, to make sure that the public is safe. So every decision I make, every decision that we talk about is going to talk about what's the safest thing for the people in New York City. Whether you live here, you work here, you visit here, that's what every decision we have to make is based on safety. And of course, the safety of our firefighters, our EMTs, and our paramedics. He went along with that. He says to me, if we have to make a decision, you tell me what you think you feel comfortable with, and then we'll start from there. And to his word, every time we had a decision about budget or any other type of project that was going on, he listened. And I have to be I'm grateful for that, because if you put me in charge of the fire department, I have the experience. You have to, listen to me. We don't always have to agree, but at least you have to give me the idea.
Now,
listen to me.
What happened to your brother? Since he was the inspiration for the fire department, was he still involved with the fire department?
My brother was hurt, serious injury at a very bad fire in Brooklyn in 1975. He broke his leg in many different places, and he was put out of the job in 1976. But he was always an influence on me.
He's still alive?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My brother's still alive.
So your brother must, as we would say, regaled and quelled when you became fire.
My brother was beaming. And it's funny. For the first maybe 15 or 20 years of my career, I was known as Patsy's brother, because that's how good he was. He was tremendous, a good leader. He ended up as a captain. But for the next 20 years, he was known as Sal's brother as I moved up the ranks. And we kid about that all the time. But I will tell you, in a moment of something that is really only between two brothers, we had a luncheon on Friday when it was my last day. And family came, friends came. It was mobbed. I got a send off.
I heard that.
I got a send off that was just unbelievable.
Our dear friend Rabbi Joe said to me, it was
and my brother at the end of the day just gave me a hug and a kiss. He says, "I've always been proud of you, never more than today." And it was like, wow, that's a moment between two brothers, somebody who was my mentor, and then on the way out, I'm going out as the fire commissioner.
Speaking of that, you are very, very close with the family. I mean, how do you meet your wife?
Wife, interesting story. My my wife used to do my sister, may she rest in peace, my older sister, she was her hairdresser. And at that time, I was single, just promoted to lieutenant, and my sister says to my wife, you should meet my brother. And I'm sure that my wife was a beautiful woman. She got that all the time. And says, why should I meet your brother? Well, he's a lieutenant. Just got promoted to lieutenant in the fire department. He's really a great guy. So I'm sure she heard that a lot. So my sister, and she says, give me your number. I said, I'm not going to give you a number. I don't know why, but my wife gave my sister a number. And my sister comes up to me and says, you should meet my hairdresser. I said, I'm not going to meet your hairdresser, but you should call her. And I never dreamed I was going to call her. She says, well, here's her number. Well, the rest is history. I called her. We went on a date.
Right.
We were married less than a year later.
So tell me, you have how many children?
5 children.
Okay, let's go the ages and
My
the
oldest-
names and what are they doing these days?
My oldest son, Salvatore, 44 years old, works in the refinery in New Jersey. Great kid. And my oldest daughter, Lisa. Lisa was born in 1978, so she's going to be 36. She's a school teacher, tremendous mom. They both have a boy and a girl.
Names? You got to tell
Oh,
me.
yeah, well, Ava and Salvatore is my son. Leah and Thomas is my daughter Lisa's children. Then I have my daughter Katie. Katie was born in 1981. And Katie has 2 children, Joseph, and she just was blessed with a baby girl, Madeline Teresa. Madeline after my mom, Teresa after my wife. And
then you have a fourth.
I have a daughter, Teresa. Teresa was born in 1984, so she was just 30. She has a son, Anthony, who will be 2 July 3rd. And she's having another baby in November.
Okay.
And then I have Joseph, who's my youngest. Joseph is 24, who's still home.
Okay. So,
And I have 2 teachers. I have a social worker, Katie. My son works in the oil refinery. And Joseph right now is working for the operating engineers.
And the greatest thing that you said to me is that you speak to the kids nearly every day.
Almost every day. We just finished texting each other this morning.
Right, and what's also interesting, which is wonderful, is that you have all the grandchildren and everybody within like 20 minutes. I mean, you moved out, I don't know how you ever moved out to Staten Island, but you moved out to Staten Island how many years ago?
I moved out there in 1970. I was the last of the siblings to move out to Staten Island. My sister moved out before the bridge, and then my other sister and brother moved out after the bridge. And then naturally I had to follow suit.
Right, so and your son who lives in Jersey, so everybody's convenient and congenial.
20 minutes away, all the children, all the grandchildren. Last night I went to Jersey, I saw my Jersey side. Today I'll see my New York side.
And you're an avid Met fan.
Diehard Met fan. And they're going to kill me unless they start to play better.
Okay. So, from soda to the docks to Vietnam to John Jay, there's a guy who's my friend and who is the fire commissioner. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Michael, very much.